The champagne flute trembled in my hand as Cassandra's words cut through the restaurant's elegant chatter like a blade. "You're pathetic, Marlene," she said, her voice dripping with disdain as she adjusted her designer blazer. "Always riding other people's success, never achieving anything yourself." The entire table, our parents, her colleagues from the law firm, even the waiter who'd been refilling our glasses, fell silent. My chest tightened, that familiar burning sensation creeping up my throat that I'd felt countless times before whenever my younger sister decided to remind everyone of my failures. I wanted to disappear into the leather booth, to become invisible like I always did when Cassandra unleashed her venom. At 52, I should have been past caring what my baby sister thought of me, but the sting never lessened. Here we were, celebrating her promotion to senior partner at Morrison and Associates, and somehow she'd managed to turn it into another opportunity to humiliate me. My hands felt clammy against the champagne glass as I watched her bask in the approving nods from her colleagues, their eyes briefly flickering to me with that mixture of pity and embarrassment that I knew all too well. "Cassandra, that's enough," our mother whispered, but her protest was weak, almost reflexive. She'd given up defending me years ago when it became clear that Cassandra was the golden child, the one who'd graduated Harvard Law, who'd married the surgeon, who'd bought the house in Beacon Hill. I was just Marlene, the older sister who'd never quite figured it out, who worked as a bookkeeper for small businesses, who lived in a modest apartment in Somerville and drove a 10-year-old Honda. But tonight felt different somehow. Maybe it was the wine. Or maybe it was the fact that I'd spent the entire day going through invoices and financial records, numbers swimming before my eyes in ways that had started to form a very interesting pattern. A pattern that involved Morrison and Associates, and a pattern that involved my sister's meteoric rise through the ranks. "Actually, Cassandra," I said quietly, my voice steadier than I felt, "I think there's something you should know about riding other people's success." The words escaped before I could stop them, and suddenly every face at the table turned toward me with surprise. My sister's perfectly sculpted eyebrows arched in that condescending way she'd perfected since childhood, her lips curving into a smirk that made my stomach clench. "Oh, please, Marlene, what could you possibly have to say that would interest any of us?" She gestured broadly at her colleagues, including them in her mockery. "Are you going to tell us about some small business owner who's behind on their quarterly taxes? How fascinating!" The table erupted in polite laughter, the kind that makes your skin crawl because you know it's not really about humor, it's about establishing who belongs and who doesn't. My phone buzzed against my leg, and I glanced down to see a text from Danny Kowalski, my closest friend, and the only person who knew what I'd been piecing together over the past 3 weeks. "You got this, Mar. Remember what we found." Danny ran a small accounting firm downtown, and when I'd brought him the Morrison and Associates invoices that had been crossing my desk, his reaction had been immediate and alarming. The numbers didn't add up. Not by a long shot. I looked back up at Cassandra, watching her lean back in her chair with that satisfied expression she always wore when she thought she'd won. Her salary had tripled in the past 2 years, an astronomical jump that she'd attributed to her brilliant legal mind and tireless work ethic. But I knew better now. I knew exactly where that money was coming from, and it wasn't from her billable hours or her courtroom victories. It was coming from somewhere much more problematic, somewhere that would make this entire celebration dinner feel like a cruel joke once the truth came out. "Actually," I said, reaching into my purse and pulling out the manila envelope I'd been carrying around for days, "I think you might want to see this before you talk about other people's success." My hands weren't shaking anymore. For the first time in years, maybe decades, I felt completely calm. Cassandra's expression shifted from amusement to irritation as I placed the envelope on the white tablecloth between us. "What is this supposed to be, Marlene? Some kind of dramatic gesture?" She reached for her wine glass, but I noticed her hand wasn't quite as steady as before. The senior partners flanking her, Mitchell Graves and Patricia Wynne leaned forward slightly, their professional instincts apparently kicking in despite the social setting. "Open it," I said simply. My heart was pounding so hard I could feel it in my temples, but my voice remained calm. Years of being dismissed, overlooked, and humiliated had led to this moment, and I wasn't going to let fear stop me now. Cassandra snatched the envelope with theatrical exasperation, her manicured nails clicking against the paper as she tore it open. I watched her face as she pulled out the first document, a bank statement showing deposits that perfectly aligned with her salary increases. Then came the invoices, the ones I'd been processing for Eastbrook Construction, the shell company that existed only on paper, but somehow managed to bill Morrison and Associates for hundreds of thousands in non-existent services. The color drained from her face so quickly that our mother gasped. "Cassandra? What is it, honey?" But Cassandra couldn't answer. She was staring at the final document in the stack, her own payslip from last month, the one that showed her latest bonus, right next to a copy of the Eastbrook invoice dated the exact same day. "You see," I said, my voice gaining strength as I watched my sister's composure crumble. "I've been doing the books for Eastbrook Construction for 3 years. Funny thing about shell companies, they're supposed to actually provide services for the money they receive. But Eastbrook? They've never laid a single brick, never poured an ounce of concrete. They exist solely to funnel money from Morrison and Associates into offshore accounts." I paused, letting that sink in. Money that somehow finds its way back as bonuses and salary increases for certain employees. Mitchell Graves slowly reached for the documents, his face grave. The irony wasn't lost on me. "Miss Chen," he said carefully, "these are very serious allegations." "Allegations?" Cassandra's voice cracked as she snatched the papers back from Mitchell's hands. "This is ridiculous! Marlene's always been jealous of my success, and now she's fabricating evidence to—" But her words died as Patricia Wynne held up her phone, showing a screen I couldn't see from my angle. "I'm looking at our internal billing records right now," Patricia said quietly, her professional demeanor chilling the air around our table. "Eastbrook Construction has indeed been one of our highest-billed clients for the past 18 months, $750,000 in total." She looked directly at Cassandra. "For services that, according to your sister's documentation, were never rendered." The restaurant suddenly felt too small, too warm. I could hear the clink of silverware from other tables, the murmur of conversations that seemed impossibly distant. Our parents sat frozen, our father's hand halfway to his water glass, our mother's mouth slightly open as if she'd forgotten how to close it. This wasn't how family dinners were supposed to go. "How did you figure it out?" Mitchell asked me, his voice professional but strained. As managing partner, he had to be calculating the damage this would do to the firm's reputation, not to mention the legal implications. "It started small," I said, my confidence growing with each word. "Eastbrook would submit invoices for consulting services or site preparation work. But when I tried to match them with actual project documentation for my records, nothing existed. No permits, no work orders, no material receipts. Nothing." I took a shaky breath. Then I noticed the payment patterns. Every time Eastbrook received a large payment from Morrison and Associates, Cassandra would get a bonus or salary increase within days. Cassandra was shaking her head frantically. "You don't understand the complexity of legal billing. There are confidential projects, sealed cases." $750,000 worth? Patricia's voice cut through Cassandra's explanation like ice. "And coincidentally, your compensation has increased by exactly that amount over the same period?" The senior partner's fingers were flying across her phone screen, pulling up what I assumed were more internal records. The waiter appeared at our table, probably wondering why nobody had touched their entrees. But one look at the tension radiating from our group sent him scurrying away. I watched Cassandra's carefully constructed world beginning to crumble, piece by piece. And for the first time in my adult life, I didn't feel sorry for her. "This is insane," Cassandra whispered, but her voice lacked conviction now. Sweat had formed along her hairline despite the restaurant's air conditioning, and she kept glancing toward the exit as if considering making a run for it. "Marlene, you're destroying our family over some bookkeeping error. You've always resented my success." "Stop." The word came out harder than I intended, silencing not just Cassandra, but the entire table. Our mother flinched as if I'd shouted, but I was done being the quiet sister, the one who absorbed everyone else's disappointments and never fought back. "This isn't about resentment, Cassandra. This is about fraud. This is about you stealing money and lying to everyone, including our parents." Mitchell Graves cleared his throat, his face ashen. "Miss Chen, I need to ask you directly. Did you create Eastbrook Construction as a vehicle to embezzle funds from our firm?" The question hung in the air like smoke. I watched Cassandra's carefully applied makeup beginning to streak as perspiration mixed with her foundation. She looked smaller somehow, diminished in a way I'd never seen before. All those years of feeling inferior to her suddenly seemed absurd. How could I have been intimidated by someone whose entire success was built on lies? It's not that simple," Cassandra stammered. "There were legitimate expenses, consultation fees that couldn't be processed through normal channels because of client confidentiality." "What clients?" Patricia demanded, her fingers still flying across her phone screen. "I'm looking at every sealed case we've handled in the past 2 years, every confidential matter that required outside consultation. There's no record of Eastbrook Construction being involved in any of them." Our father finally found his voice, though it came out as barely more than a croak. "Cassandra, please tell me this isn't true. Please tell me you didn't—" He couldn't finish the sentence, couldn't voice what we all now knew to be fact. But it was our mother's reaction that broke something loose in my chest. She wasn't looking at Cassandra with disappointment or anger. She was looking at her with fear. "How much trouble are you in?" she whispered. "How much trouble are we all in?" That's when it hit me. This wasn't just about Cassandra's stolen success or my years of feeling inadequate. This was about a family that was about to be torn apart by federal investigators, by criminal charges, by the kind of scandal that destroys everything it touches. And sitting there in that upscale restaurant, surrounded by the wreckage of what I'd thought would be simple justice, I realized I might have just ruined all of our lives. "Nobody else knew," Cassandra said suddenly, her voice barely audible above the restaurant's ambient noise. "It was just me. I set up Eastbrook, I submitted the invoices, I handled everything." She was looking directly at Mitchell and Patricia now, her lawyer instincts finally kicking in despite her panic. "The firm is clean. This was my operation entirely." Mitchell's relief was palpable, but Patricia looked skeptical. "You're telling us you single-handedly created a shell company, established banking relationships, and processed $750,000 in fraudulent billing without anyone else's knowledge or assistance?" "That's exactly what I'm telling you." Cassandra's voice was gaining strength, and I recognized the tone. It was the same one she'd used as a child when she'd been caught red-handed, but was still trying to negotiate her way out of trouble. "I have a confession to make, but I need to be clear about something first." She turned to look at me, and for a moment, I saw something I'd never seen in her eyes before, genuine fear. "Marlene, I'm sorry. I'm sorry for what I said tonight, and I'm sorry for everything." Our mother started crying then, quiet tears that she tried to hide behind her napkin. Our father just sat there, staring at his untouched plate like it might contain answers to questions he didn't know how to ask. The weight of what was happening settled over our table like a heavy blanket. "I started small," Cassandra continued, her words coming faster now. "Just a few thousand here and there to help with the house payments when Gerard was between surgeries. The medical practice wasn't doing well, and we were drowning in debt. I told myself it was temporary, that I'd pay it back once things turned around. She laughed bitterly. But it's never temporary, is it? One fake invoice became 10, then 20. Before I knew it, I was in too deep to stop. Patricia was already on her phone, probably calling the firm's crisis management team. Mitchell was writing notes on his napkin, documenting everything Cassandra said. And I sat there, watching my sister's life implode in real time, feeling a strange mixture of vindication and horror. The promotion, I said quietly. Was that part of it too? Cassandra nodded miserably. They needed to justify my salary increases. If I was just an associate making senior partner money, it would have raised flags. The promotion made it look legitimate. She looked around the table at all of us. I know what you're thinking. I know what I've become, but I never meant for it to go this far. Mitchell closed his notepad and looked directly at me. Miss Chen, I need to ask, what are your intentions here? Are you planning to take this to the authorities? Or were you hoping we could handle this internally? His tone was carefully neutral, but I could hear the underlying plea. A scandal like this could destroy Morrison and Associates' reputation, costing dozens of innocent people their jobs. Before I could answer, my phone rang. Gerard's name flashed on the screen, and Cassandra went white. Don't, she whispered, but I was already swiping to answer. Marlene? Thank God you picked up. Gerard's voice was strained, panicked. Is Cassandra with you? The FBI just left our house. They had a warrant. They took our computers, our files, everything. They said something about financial crimes and that Cassandra needed to contact her attorney immediately. The background noise suggested he was driving, probably racing toward us. I looked at Cassandra, whose face had gone beyond pale into a sickly gray. Gerard, I said carefully, we're at Romano's. You should probably get here. The FBI? Our mother gasped. Oh my God, Cassandra, what have you done? Patricia was already standing, her phone pressed to her ear. I need to speak with our general counsel immediately, she was saying. We have a situation that requires immediate crisis management. She walked away from the table, her voice fading as she moved toward the restaurant's entrance. How did they find out so fast? Cassandra asked. But even as the words left her mouth, understanding dawned in her eyes. Danny, your friend Danny turned us in, didn't he? I felt my chest tighten. Danny and I were trying to figure out the best way to handle this. He said if we didn't report it within 72 hours, we could be considered accessories after the fact. The weight of that decision hit me fully now. I hadn't just exposed my sister's crimes. I'd potentially saved myself from federal charges. So you've known for 3 days. Our father's voice was hollow. You've known for 3 days that our daughter was... He couldn't finish the sentence. Mitchell returned to the table, his expression grim. The firm's attorneys are on their way. Cassandra, I strongly advise you not to say anything else without legal representation. He looked around the table at our family, and I saw pity in his eyes. I'm sorry this had to happen like this, but you should know. The firm will be cooperating fully with any investigation. We have a fiduciary responsibility to our clients and our reputation. That's when it really hit me. This wasn't just about family drama anymore. This was about federal crimes, prison sentences, and lives being permanently destroyed. And I was the one who'd lit the match. Gerard burst through the restaurant's front door like a man fleeing a fire, his usually perfect hair disheveled and his tie askew. He spotted our table immediately and rushed over, his face a mixture of panic and confusion. Cassandra, what the hell is going on? They wouldn't tell me anything except that you're under investigation for financial crimes. He stopped short when he saw the documents scattered across our table, the tears streaming down our mother's face, and the grim expressions of the law firm partners. Sit down, Gerard, Cassandra said quietly. There's something I need to tell you. But Gerard was already piecing it together, his surgeon's analytical mind working through the evidence before him. The house, he said slowly. The new car. The vacation to Europe last month. I kept wondering how we could afford it all when the practice has been struggling. He sank into the chair next to Cassandra, his face crumpling. Oh God, Cassie, what did you do? I was trying to save us, she whispered. The practice was hemorrhaging money. We were 3 months behind on the mortgage, and you were talking about bankruptcy. I couldn't let that happen. I thought I could fix it, make it right before anyone noticed. $750,000, Gerard, I said, my voice steady despite the chaos erupting around us. That's how much she stole to save you. Gerard looked at me with an expression I'd never seen before. Pure hatred. You did this! You turned in your own sister to the FBI. His voice was shaking with rage. Do you have any idea what you've done to our family, to our children? That hit me like a physical blow. Cassandra and Gerard's twin boys, Marcus and Dylan, were only 14. They were about to watch their mother get arrested, their family name destroyed, their privileged life evaporate overnight. And I was the one who'd triggered it all. The children! Our mother gasped, apparently having the same realization. What's going to happen to the boys? Patricia returned to the table, her expression grave. The attorneys will be here in 20 minutes. Until then, nobody says anything else. Cassandra, you need to understand. The federal government doesn't play games with financial crimes of this magnitude. You're looking at potential prison time. How long? Gerard asked, his voice barely audible. 5 to 10 years, possibly more if they can prove intent to defraud clients, or if there are other charges. Patricia's words fell like hammer blows. The restitution alone will bankrupt you both. I watched my sister absorb this information, watched her realize that her children would spend their high school years visiting their mother in federal prison. And despite everything she'd done to me over the years, despite the humiliation and the cruelty, I felt something break inside my chest. Stop, I said, standing up so abruptly that my chair scraped against the floor. Everyone at the table looked at me in surprise. Just stop for a minute and listen to me. My hands were shaking, but my voice was steady. Gerard, you want to blame me for destroying your family? Your wife stole $750,000. She built your entire life on stolen money, and you want to make me the villain because I found out about it? She's your sister, Gerard shot back, his face flushed with anger. Family protects family. You should have come to us first, given us a chance to fix this quietly. Fix this quietly? I laughed, but there was no humor in it. How do you quietly return $750,000? How do you quietly explain 2 years of fraudulent billing to a law firm that's now facing potential criminal liability? I looked around the table at my family, my parents huddled together in shock, Cassandra staring at her hands, Gerard glaring at me with pure hatred. You know what the real tragedy is here. I spent 52 years believing I was the failure in this family. Cassandra finally looked up at me, her eyes red and swollen. Marlene, please. I know I hurt you tonight. I know I've hurt you for years, but think about Marcus and Dylan. Think about what this will do to them. I am thinking about them, I said, my voice breaking slightly. I'm thinking about how they're going to grow up believing their mother was a victim instead of a criminal. I'm thinking about how they'll learn that when things get tough, you don't work harder or make sacrifices. You steal from other people. The words were pouring out of me now, years of suppressed anger and hurt finally finding their voice. Do you know what I've been doing for the past 3 days since Danny and I figured this out? I've been lying awake at night, trying to decide if I could live with myself for protecting you. And apparently you decided you couldn't, our father said quietly. It was the first time he'd spoken directly to me since the whole thing started, and his tone was flat, disappointed. You're right, I said, looking him straight in the eye. I decided I couldn't live with being an accessory to a federal crime. I decided I couldn't live with knowing that every dollar Cassandra spent on her perfect house and her perfect life was stolen from people who trusted her. I turned back to Cassandra. But mostly, I decided I couldn't live with being the sister who enabled you to keep destroying yourself. Patricia's phone buzzed, and she glanced at it with a frown. "The attorneys are here. Cassandra, we need to go now." Cassandra stood up slowly, her legs unsteady beneath her. For a moment, she just looked at me, and I saw something in her expression that I'd never seen before. Not anger, not superiority, but something that looked almost like respect. "You know what's funny?" she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "All these years I thought you were weak. I thought you were the sister who never amounted to anything, who lived this small, pathetic life while I conquered the world." She picked up her purse with trembling hands. "But you're the only one in this family who had the courage to do the right thing, even when it cost you everything." Gerard stood beside her, his arm around her shoulders, but he was still glaring at me. "The right thing?" he spat. "You destroyed 2 children's lives tonight. I hope you can live with that." "I can live with it," I said, and I realized I meant it. Because those boys deserve to know the truth about right and wrong, even if it's painful. They deserve to know that actions have consequences, that you can't build a life on lies and stolen money. I looked at my parents, who were still sitting in stunned silence. And maybe someday they'll understand that their aunt loved their mother enough to stop her from digging herself in deeper. Patricia appeared at Cassandra's elbow. "We need to leave now. The attorneys are waiting, and we have a lot of work to do before the formal charges are filed." Cassandra nodded, then turned back to me one last time. "Marlene, She stopped, shook her head, and tried again. "I'm sorry. For tonight. For everything. You were right about me. You were always right about me." She paused at the edge of our table. "Take care of Mom and Dad, okay? They're gonna need you now." And then she was gone, walking out of the restaurant between Patricia and Gerard, her head held high despite everything. I watched through the window as they got into separate cars, Cassandra with the lawyers, Gerard driving away alone into the night. Our parents and I sat in silence for a long time after they left. The waitstaff had given up pretending this was a normal evening and were keeping their distance. Finally, our mother reached across the table and took my hand. "I don't understand what happened tonight," she said quietly. "I don't understand any of this. But I know my daughters, and I know you wouldn't have done this if you didn't believe it was right." She squeezed my fingers. "It's going to be a hard road ahead for all of us." 6 months later, I was still doing books for small businesses, still living in my modest apartment, still driving my 10-year-old Honda. But everything had changed. Cassandra pled guilty to federal wire fraud and was sentenced to 4 years in prison. Gerard divorced her before the trial even started. And me? I'd finally learned the difference between being pathetic and being principled. Sometimes they look exactly the same from the outside, but only one of them lets you sleep at night.